Morning. My name is Jacek Kucharczyk. I'm the president of Institute of Public Affairs, a Polish think tank, and I have the honor and pleasure to chair this panel on the Polish presidency. I think we should start right now because we don't have much time, and I will introduce my panelists in turn as they take their turn to speak. So I will just say a few words of introduction to our discussion. The idea is there to have relatively short interventions from each of the panelists. And we would very much like to have you involved, you ask questions, and the panelists reacting to see to where the discussion should be going, because as I mentioned, there is a lot to talk about concerning the presidency. So first of all, let me state the obvious fact that this is the first time that Poland is taking over the rotating presidency in EU Council. And this in itself is a challenge, especially that as new member states who did this before found out, the newcomer is watched very closely, and there is something like, even some people say, double standards in evaluating. So each failure will be magnified. And again, in the Czech and Hungarian perspective, some of the problems came out of the political situation in those countries. And we also have to remember that Poland will also have elections during its presidency. So that in itself makes the whole task quite challenging. In addition to this, Poland takes over EU rotating presidency under the new Lisbon Treaty. It's not the first country to run the presidency under the new treaty. Spaniards, Belgians, and Hungarians did it before us, but the rules are still partly flexible. There are gaps to be filled in translating the rules of the new treaty, mainly regarding the cooperation between rotating presidency, the president of the European Council, Van Rompuy, and High Representative Ashton, who take over some of the old functions of rotating presidencies, and this creates also a certain context. We may even expect that some of the practices developed during the Polish presidency will define the roles of those respective actors in what will follow up the next presidencies. And the third factor to keep in mind when we discuss the presidency is obviously the state of Europe and the state of world around us. Poland will take over in a very interesting but challenging time. Not only Europe is still trying to recover from its public debt crisis in the Eurozone, but also we have events such as the Arab Spring, which has been broadly discussed during this conference, but it also creates certain both challenges and opportunities for the Polish presidency. The challenge is that this is largely unknown, how it will work out, how it will develop, and obviously this is something that even the best planning cannot fully take into account. The second challenge related to the events in North Africa is that it will take away the attention of European policymakers from the East, which is very important for Poland, Eastern Partnership and also Russia, to the South. And Poland has to work hard to be the presidency of the European Union, so it will have to devote a lot of attention to what is happening in the South. However, the Arab Spring, as the recent events show, I think, is also an opportunity for Poland, because part of Polish agenda is to strengthen the democracy support in European Union policies, and what happened in North Africa actually opened a way to discussion on this issue, and Minister Sikorski, who spoke yesterday, mentioned, for example, his initiative of creating European Endowment for Democracy. This is an initiative which wouldn't have been possible without the events of the Arab Spring, and now there is a window of opportunity to really strengthen this dimension of EU external relations. So, as I'm saying, there are both threats and opportunities in what's happening around Europe at this moment. As for Polish priorities, which were announced or reconfirmed really quite recently, we have three major groups of priorities that were, and the first group concerns the state of European economy, exit from the crisis, and building foundations for sustainable economic growth in Europe. And this concerns such issues as a deepening internal market, building up Europe's intellectual capital and innovation capacity, and also initiation of the negotiations on EU budget or the financial framework. The second group of priorities is called Secure Europe, and then it again contains at least two big issues: strengthening European common security and defense policy, as well as strengthening Europe's energy security. And the third big group of priorities is called Open Europe, and this would include both issues related to enlargement, Eastern Partnership, EU-Russia relations, with such issues as already mentioned, democracy support and visa liberalization as things that were flagged quite often in statements from the Polish officials. So we have this very broad, very ambitious agenda. In difficult times, the question is, can Poland succeed? What can practically be achieved? I will ask this first question to Professor Danuta Hübner, who is a member of the European Parliament and chairwoman of the Committee for Regional Development. And I would ask Professor Hübner to comment in particular on this first priority or group of priorities relating to exit from the crisis and chances for creating sustainable growth in Europe. How realistic is this priority, let me ask? What can practically be achieved during this relatively short term of 6 months, including summer vacation? Please, Professor Hübner, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. You didn't mention that before. You said that I just have 5 minutes, so I will just briefly touch issues which I believe are very important. And let me start by some comments on how the presidency can make itself effective or successful, as you are saying. And I think, first of all, we should avoid being mediocre, especially on growth. We should be very, very tough, very, very concrete. I think we should insist on priorities and be very clear in passing the message that growth, without growth, Europe will not make it, because without growth, we will not pay our debts, we will not become more competitive globally, and we will not create jobs that will not be lost tomorrow to India or China. Thirdly, I would also say that we must make sure that all the decisions that must be taken, which are in program, that they will be taken quickly and smoothly, but you also must be credible. And I think that on growth, Poland has a chance to be credible because we managed to maintain growth through difficult years of crisis in Europe, but we also have to continue to do what we will be preaching about. And I think this is also a challenge for Poland today. My second comment is related to the fact that we have in Europe now this tendency to speak in separate rooms on stability, on growth, on financial sector. All those issues are extremely strongly related. And, for example, financial sector capability to resume support for especially SMEs to generate growth. This is something which I think without which the growth will not take place. Without stability, without the reform of economic governance and the continuation of financial sector reform, we will not build confidence, which is so badly needed for growth. Thirdly, I would say that what the Polish presidency is seeing as a chance to make Europe grow is a combination of single market reform, as you mentioned yourself, other reforms, but also funding. And why funding is so important? Because we are in a situation where most likely public funding will play an extremely important role, a catalytic role, a leverage role, and we all know that without private investment, growth will not happen in Europe. But I think this time around the support coming from public funding is more essential than ever. And we all know that national economies, national budgets will stay in the mood of cuts for some time in Europe, and that makes European Union budget especially important in the context of future growth. And then that, of course, means that we have to be also, I would say, innovative in thinking about how the European Union budget should function, how it should lead to more public-private partnership investment, how it should also play a catalytic role in the sense of contributing to shifts in investment patterns, because we are not talking, when we talk about growth, we don't only talk about the need to get with growth where we were before the crisis, but we have at the same time to put the European economy on the path of increasing productivity and increasing competitiveness. So we need different type of investment, and especially I think the combination of public and private in the times of structural change is extremely important. And the EU budget is and will remain, even if a little bit more might get through the negotiations, which I still hope, it will remain extremely small on any account. If you look, 1% or around 1% is just 1% of GNI, and 1% is covering a lot of tasks that Europe is, to which actually we are adding nearly every day a new task for Europe. So for Poland to convince everybody across Europe that you cannot have the same logic for European budget which you apply to national budgets, which is the logic of cuts, because European Union budget, as opposed to national budgets, is basically an investment budget. You have 5% more or less going to administrative costs, and then probably not everything that is agriculture is probably growth, or maybe the farmers would probably argue with me on this, but generally it's an investment budget. So if you cut on the only source of public investment in Europe, then you can forget, I think, about the support the private sector needs. And now I think the priorities, we can discuss, of course, the priorities, but as I said, the priority is to move Europe to a growth that is really based on advances in technology and science. But we also have to see that substantial part of Europe is extremely badly connected. So I normally I talk about innovation, but I would like to add also that if Europe does not invest more in all types of infrastructure, especially energy grids, especially telecommunication, but also transportation links, then the competitiveness will continue to be undermined. My 5 minutes are gone.
Yes.
Thank
you very much for your discipline, and there will be another chance to speak after we hear from the audience. But now my second question will go to Professor Alan Mayhew of Sussex University, who is also a member of the international team of advisors to the Polish government preparing for the presidency. And I'm not asking you to release all the secret or confidential advice that you're giving to the government, but I would like to ask you a sort of broadened question than the one I asked to Professor Hibner. That is, what would be a successful presidency for Poland? What would constitute a successful presidency? What are the do's and don'ts if you are a government taking over rotating presidency in EU Council under the new treaty in those circumstances that I tried to describe in my introduction? Professor Mayhew, please.
Okay, thanks very much, Jacek. I promised our chairman that I would disagree with Minister Hübner. I mean, I find it quite difficult to disagree with Minister Hübner. But I would like to sort of take a slightly different tack and sort of come down to the level of what really the Polish presidency can achieve, as opposed to the great themes that Minister Hübner raised.
I was asked about it.
I know, yeah. I think, if you want to get down to basics, what would be really good of the Polish presidency was if the presidency was efficient and effective. That would already be, for EU presidencies, quite an achievement. The Polish presidency is following, just to give you an example, I wouldn't put a carpet in the council building which shows the Polish-Lithuanian Empire, for instance. This sort of thing would be good to avoid. So efficiency and effectiveness would be already a big gain on some previous presidencies. I think there's a need in Poland to say to the Polish people and to the Polish press that expectations that the Polish presidency can double direct income subsidies to small farmers or can double the cohesion funds, this is just not on it. This is just not on. There are very, very limited possibilities for the Polish presidency. Lisbon the Lisbon Treaty has meant that the rotating presidency has much more limited powers to do what it wants, and maybe Antonio will say a bit more about that. But clearly, we've gone into since Lisbon, we've gone into a situation where there is more intergovernmentalism, where a lot of the key issues are treated by the European Council, where the European Parliament has much enhanced powers, which it doesn't seem to know what to do with always. But we have gone into a different situation. We have a high representative on foreign policy. All of these things are to some extent limiting for the Polish presidency. On the other hand, Poland, if it runs an efficient presidency, and if it works closely with the European Parliament, with the President of the European Council, with the Commission, can achieve all sorts of things, even in areas which, according to Lisbon, have moved away from it. So, first of all, the Polish presidency can tackle all of those internal issues which are so important to growth that Danuta Hübner was talking about. So, the Polish presidency will chair all of those council groups in internal market, justice and home affairs, and so on, including competitiveness, and it will be in charge, at least for the first few months, of this whole budget and multi-annual financial framework discussion. In all of those areas, Poland can do things. We can do things on the digital agenda in the EU and on various issues, all of which will be extremely useful, even though they may seem very specific and not giving rise to immediate prospects of enhanced growth. But the rotating presidency can do more than simply those internal issues where it still chairs the council groups. And obviously neighborhood policy is one area where Poland can achieve quite a lot. On the East European countries, you have the summit of the Eastern Partnership. I've been working with the Ukrainian government now for years and years and years, and at long last there is going to be an association agreement with Ukraine, which could also come in the Polish presidency. And there's the whole Arab Spring issue, where Poland has to show that it's not just purely Eastern, but it's an honest broker in everything it does, and that it will be constructive on the south as well as the east. So there, on the neighborhood policy, I think will obviously be. When I started advising the Polish government, I thought, perhaps Poland shouldn't be so insistent on neighborhood, because after all, that's a sort of traditional Polish thing. But now, with all the things that we know have happened, it seems to me that neighborhood policy is bound to be a major issue, where Poland will have to work closely with the High Representative, with the European Council, and with the Parliament. Above all, Poland can perhaps invigorate the whole European integration debate, because we are now in a situation where everybody is shouting against everybody else, and the whole European spirit has somewhat declined in recent years. And there, I think Poland is in an ideal situation to talk all of that up. The last point, because the chairman is looking at me, the last point is, of course, the problem of events, and events are going to come up in the Polish presidency, which you're going to have to deal with. I mean, I'm an economist. I would have gone for Greek restructuring a long time ago, but Greek restructuring may well come up because Merkel and the German government are in favor of it, apparently. You know, these things will have to be dealt with. There, obviously, the Polish government is limited in what it can do because those issues, the euro crisis, have been dealt with in the European Council. Poland will chair ECOFIN, but nevertheless, the key decisions will be taken in the European Council, and Poland, not being a member of the Eurozone, will have limited influence. What I think is important for Poland in the longer term is that it's obvious that we're going towards a core Europe, which is going to be the Eurozone, with a much deeper level of integration, and Poland, unlike my own country, which seems quite happy to be outside all of that, Poland clearly wants to be at the heart of Europe, and therefore Poland will need to progress towards eventual Euro membership in the medium term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. You said that European neighborhood policy is an obvious priority for Poland, and for a long time, neighborhood policy for Poland meant mainly Eastern Partnership, and Eastern Partnership is also one of the most frequently discussed priorities. The feeling is that this initiative, which was successfully launched by Poland and Sweden more than 2 years, almost 3 years ago, and adopted in Prague during the Czech presidency 2 years ago, is now in a certain crisis. In many of the Eastern Partnership countries, we had seen something like a regression of democracy. The exception to this crisis seems to be Moldova, which is seen as Eastern Partnership last hope, even sometimes by experts, the best pupil in the class. So I will turn my next question to Ms. Natalie German, who is the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and European Affairs in the government of Moldova. So if you could tell us a little bit how Polish presidency, the challenges, opportunities are viewed from Moldova, from one of the Eastern Partnership countries. What can Poland do in this respect, or what should it do from your perspective?
Thank you very much. I would start by saying that the expectations of the Polish presidency in the European Council are very high in Eastern Partnership countries and in the Republic of Moldova in particular. And these expectations are grounded on that extraordinary level of understanding, openness, and cooperation that predominates in the bilateral relations between Poland and the countries of Eastern Partnership. Just to bring you one example, Republic of Moldova and Poland, for example, have launched a year and a half ago the Moldo-Polish Forum on European Integration that functions quite successfully, and whereby the Moldavian line sectoral institutions are learning the experience of European integration from their Polish counterparts. It works in the form of exchange of visits, study tours, and simple transfer of experience. Besides, as you mentioned, Chairman, Poland and Sweden 2 years ago launched the new European policy towards its eastern neighbors, the Eastern Partnership. And in Prague, we have stated a number of very important principles. Now, of course, preparing for the Polish presidency in the EU, we are very happy to discover the third priority, which is Europe benefiting from openness, where certainly we have clearly identified a number of important opportunities that will be opened to all neighbors of the European Union, including to Eastern partners, but it would also go about continuous process of enlargement, which, as has always been for Moldova, is the biggest and greatest example and inspiration in view of continuing important structural reforms that my government is pursuing in the context of a very ambitious European integration agenda. But preparations for the Eastern Partnership Summit that will take place in Warsaw in September this year have probably brought a little bit more dynamism to that Eastern dimension to which we referred. And over here, I would like to state that this event is important. It's important for EU, it's important for all of us, since for the first time there will be a clear finality of the first stage of the Eastern Neighborhood Policy Review that has been launched some time ago by the European Commission and the Member States. And again, it would be an opportunity to pave the way ahead and to see how the partnership will be developed and how everybody could benefit from it. Nobody knows when the next Eastern Partnership Summit would be organized or held, so we have simply no right to miss this opportunity. And if we talk about the conceptual deliverables from review of the Eastern Partnership and the Eastern Partnership Summit, I would like to state very clearly that Moldova expects that the issue of the European perspective of those Eastern Partnership who are delivering on accession criteria will be raised and analyzed thoroughly. In Prague, we were talking about political association and European integration as an objective of the policy. I think it is time to look a little bit further and assess how different Eastern partners are delivering on reforms and accession criteria. And for those Eastern partners, and I would like to name my country among them, of course, the prospect of application for the future membership of the European Union in the sense of the Article 49 of the Lisbon Treaty should be clearly spelled out. And of course, the ENP communication that was released in May this year introduces and mentions this subject, although a bit vaguely from our point of view. So I guess there will be way to continue and expand on that in Warsaw and beyond. Another conceptual principle is that of differentiation. So we would like to clearly mention that this principle should predominate in the deliberations of the European Union towards Eastern partners, and it has to be continued in the so-called more for more principle. So I would advocate in favor of receiving more and adequate resources and assistance in case a country is capable of delivering on more reforms in terms of regulatory adjustments and structural modernization in the respective countries. If we look into the priority areas of cooperation, where we should focus our attention as a result of the summit deliberations, would be the areas that were mentioned by the previous speakers. The association agreements should be continued, and well, certainly Ukraine and Moldova have advanced quite far in this process. For my country in particular, the focus will be on launch of the negotiations of the deep and comprehensive free trade area, which we are about to start in the immediate aftermath of the Warsaw Summit, and also the issue of mobility, because mobility is an important, sensitive, and absolutely realistic deliverable that European Union can offer to Eastern partners. So for Moldova in particular, it will be continuation of the visa liberalization dialogue, and we hope to progress very much, particularly under the Polish presidency in the Council, because we are now in phase 1, improving the legislative framework, and we are going to pass to phase 2, thorough implementation of that in the second half of this year. The sectoral cooperation with us is very important as well. And here I would also like to refer to first two priorities of the Polish presidency, and namely European integration as a source of growth and secure Europe. Because what is being envisaged by Poland to be focused to and inside the European Union is absolutely relevant for us. since the dialogue on these areas should be extended to European Union partners and partners in the East in particular. First of all, of course, the structural dialogue on macroeconomic policies, promoting foreign direct investments, energy security policy, transport interconnections, and other related areas. Speaking about bilateral and multilateral dimensions of the Eastern Partnership, I think we could do a little bit more together, developing multilateral platforms to match the dynamism of the bilateral relations between Eastern partners and the European Union. But again, it has to be concentrated on absolutely clear benchmarks and deliverables in terms of concrete harmonized pieces of legislation and regulatory approximation. What I also wanted to mention, echoing the previous speakers, we've been advocated for an increased support for our civil society in the Republic of Moldova. Our civil society deserves absolutely all support in the world. They are dynamic and vibrant, and actually we owe them and to the young people of Moldova the result of that important dramatic transformation that occurred on the 7th of April 2009, when young people and the civil society representatives took to the streets of the capital city and protested against fraud elections. Now, of course, they come to the government asking to be supported, to be better heard and better known, not only within the country and in the regional context, but in the European Union as well. The best response to that, I hope, will be the European Endowment for Democracy, and we are grateful to Poland and to other countries who supported that initiative and who will be promoting it, I'm sure, sparing no efforts. And we will very much support you in that. Another issue that we wanted to have will be the business component of the Eastern Partnership. And we are grateful that Business Forum will be organized in the framework of the Warsaw Summit as well. And last but not least, speaking about the financial instruments to back up our cooperation, I think we should do very well developing not only the ENPI instrument, but also looking into the possibility to access structural funds of the European Union for those Eastern partners who can deliver on structural sectoral reforms in the area like environment, cohesion, regional cooperation, energy and transportation. So these are very shortly what we expect from that dimension of the priorities of the Polish chairmanship. And again, we are looking forward for its start and successful continuation. Many thanks.
Thank you very much for that. As we see the expectations, even concerning one issue like Eastern Partnership and from one country, this list is relatively extensive, so we can see what kind of challenges Poland will face in trying to accommodate a number of expectations, needs, ambitions. And my final question in this round will go to Mr. Antonio Misiroli, who is the head of European Dialogue section in Bureau of European Policy Advisors in the European Commission. And my question is about the view from Brussels, how ambitions and challenges especially faced by Polish presidency are viewed in European institutions according to your best knowledge, please.
Thank you, Jacek. Actually, in spite and beyond all the preparations that have been made, and before joining the Commission, I was part of the team that was led by Alan, so I could witness myself the degree of intensity and also anticipation which the Polish presidency was prepared already in early 2009. Despite and beyond all that, the very day the presidency starts, it's a completely different ballgame. It's like a battle. All the battle plans prepared by the generals may have to be set aside the very day the presidency starts. It is a combination of challenges that normally put a lot of strain on all the officials that have to lead a number of technical meetings. I mean, the organizational challenge is the most important one in this particular respect. It was already pointed out by Alan. There are myriads of technical meetings at different level that have chaired, conducted, and brought to a positive end. Very often the performance of the presidency is measured against its ability not to push forward its own points, but to be able to forge consensus among the 25, 27, and counting member states. So that is the first challenge. I read an interview by my colleague who leads the EU delegation here, representation here in Brussels, who said that she was enthusiastic about the degree of preparation, and she thought that the Polish presidency would be almost a Stakhanovite in leading the presidency. That is very promising, and we can only wish you all the best in this particular respect. Doing this for the first time, however, is always a challenge in many, many respects, and you have to be aware and also generous when it comes to evaluating the performance of the presidency. The second biggest challenge is, I think, coordination. That was not necessarily the case before the Lisbon Treaty entered into force. It's certainly the case now. The presidency exercises ever more a collective challenge for all the institutions involved. Preparations have gone very well, in particular with the Commission. I remember myself there were at least 2 collective meetings of the Polish government with the College of Commissioners. Coordination and the mutual agreement are quite advanced in this respect. There is no reason to worry about that. There is no reason to worry either about coordination with the European Parliament, and the fact that President Buzek will remain in charge until the end of the year is certainly a guarantee in this particular respect. In other areas, things may have to be tested, but the fact that Poland is an active player also in the Europact Plus and is a contributor to the financial facility bodes well also for the difficult decisions that may have to be taken next in that particular area. The third challenge, and it has not been mentioned here, but I think it's my intellectual duty to raise it, is elections in Poland. There will be parliamentary elections on the 30th of October, and to my knowledge and memory, it is the first time that the running presidency has regular political elections during its mandate. I'm Italian. I remember very well that we had early elections, extraordinary elections in '96 in the middle of the EU presidency, and you may remember more recently the Czech Republic was confronted with a similar challenge in 2009. In this particular case, the elections had been planned and are following the official calendar. There was in the past a degree of concern about this, because that could be disruptive, there could be a change in government, it is always a possibility, and that could affect the carrying out the presidency. To the extent that a few years ago, if you remember, Germany asked Finland to invert the turn of presidency because Germany expected to go to the polls in the autumn of 2006, and that coincided with the EU presidency. In the end, the inversion happened, so Germany and Finland switched the presidency, but Germany had early elections the year before, so it proved to a certain extent useless to do that. But there was a degree of concern. My understanding is the preparations have been so accurate until now that there will be a sort of inertia anyway, even beyond the 30th of October, whereby the degree to which the elections could affect the outcome, especially if there is continuity in the majority in government, will be minimal. But don't forget that normally towards December there is always a need for the presidents to give a final nudge to the deals that have to be forged in this. The last and final challenge is the agenda itself. What has been planned and articulated already months ago may be disrupted by events, as Alan already mentioned. I will give you a couple of examples. It is certainly true that the emphasis on growth and new sources of growth, I understand there will be a special presidency report that we presented in early October. BEPA itself will probably cooperate in presenting the results of the report in Brussels at the beginning of that month. Will be an important flagship event for the presidency, but it's unlikely to have a direct impact on growth in Europe in the 2 months to come. I mean, that is something that is more for the medium, long-term time frame. And therefore, we have to be aware that probably the presidency will be judged also by its reactions to developments that may or are likely to occur during the 6 months. If you look at the foreseeable future, you have already, well, the Arab Spring is going to have an impact. There are elections planned in Tunisia and Egypt in the early autumn. There is the big looming challenge of the vote in the General Assembly of the United Nations over the Palestinian state. And every member state will have to take a stance in that particular respect. And the presidency will be also looked at with particular attention. Look forward also to what might happen in the field of enlargement. It hasn't been mentioned in this particular aspect, but it is very likely that in a few days, member states will agree to close negotiations with Croatia. That is the proposal the Commission has put forward. Then The accession treaty will have to be trashed out with Croatia and will have to be agreed probably by the end of the year. That will fall under the responsibility of the rotating presidency because it is a General Affairs Council affair. There will have to be some decisions about Serbia and its ambition to join the European Union, especially after the arrest of Ratko Mladic and is being sent to The Hague. There will be the progress report on Turkey, which may be more critical than in the past due to domestic development in Turkey. And it will be interesting to see how Turkey reacts. And that, too, falls within the remit of the presidency in this particular respect. So you could already prepare yourselves to that effect. On the budget, there will be the beginning of a discussion. The Commission itself is likely to present its own proposals at the end of this month, and therefore the Polish presidency semester will be occupied by the debate among the member states and among the institutions on the budget. There will be coordination between the Commission and the Polish government, and Commissioner Lewandowski will play an important role, but do not expect any result by the end of the presidency. The debate will continue during the Danish presidency, and many people think that it is likely that the final deal will have to be forged under the Cypriot presidency that will be in the second half of 2012. And why so? Because there are presidential elections in France in the spring of 2012. And until the new French president or the old new president is elected or re-elected, it is very unlikely that any deal will be struck on that issue. Last and final point, the agenda is also about events, that is the black swans, the unknowns, the known and the unknown unknowns. And very often, in retrospect, the presidency is judged and evaluated in the light of its ability to react quickly to unexpected events. But this is very difficult to discuss without knowing what the unknowns could be.
Thank you very much. So thank you to all the panelists for their interventions. And now I will open the floor for questions and comments from the audience. Please raise your hand and state your name and affiliated institution you are affiliated with. And please try to keep both comments and questions relatively short because we have, as always, not much time, and I guess there will be so many issues to discuss that we would like to keep this discussion going. Please.
Bartosz Mieszkowski, European Center of Geopolitical Analysis. I got a question to Ms. Prof. Danuta Hübner. 16th of March, Mr. Radosław Sikorski, Minister of Foreign Affairs, he delivered a speech in Polish Parliament about the Polish presidency, Polish priorities, and we've heard about free trade accord between European Union and Moldova. We've heard about supporting Croatia and then Turkey with their connection to the European institution. But I really didn't hear about real strategy towards Belarus, and I think this is very important, especially now when Lukashenko's regime is a real economic danger. He even said requests to the International Monetary Fund for help. Do we actually have a strategy towards Belarus?
I will collect several questions, so please, Ms. Baruchashvili.
Tamara Beruchashvili, State Minister's Office on European Euro-Atlantic Integration from Georgia. First of all, thank you very much for very nice interventions. I can fully subscribe what my friend and colleague Natalia said regarding priorities and expectations. Unfortunately, we feel a bit abandoned during this forum as a Georgia because there is no proper understanding, neither in Washington or in Brussels, that Georgia as a country and the region of the South Caucasus belongs geographically and spiritually also the Eastern Europe. So we hope that there will be better understanding of all that, the issues in Warsaw during Polish presidency. So I also want to mention that expectations in Georgia of Polish presidency are quite high. We want to see the summit in Warsaw as a new page in Eastern Partnership that will not only be a stock-taking exercise, but will specify issues like European prospects, not just make declaration on visa liberalization and open Europe and mobility, but will say that these priorities are attainable. We expect that the new motto, more for more, will be translated in concrete actions, and the proper benchmarks and criteria will be visible, because Georgia pretends that it can deliver, it is delivering, and we very much hope that that will be properly appreciated as our performance. So we are very happy that Moldova and Ukraine is taken on the board, and this is very much visible from the recent communication. But we want reassurance that Georgia will not be deprived from the opportunity to be part of this process and will be given free trade opportunity, visa liberalization, and so on. So that was my comment. My question is, as it was mentioned several times, the Arab Spring created opportunities and challenges for Europe, and particularly for Polish presidency. So my question is, what would be your assessment in regard of that geopolitics versus more for more?
Thank you very much. Who would like? Please.
My name is Tomasz Błoński. I'm a student from Wroclaw University. I wanted to ask you that question to Minister Sikorski, but I didn't make it yesterday. So I just want to ask you regarding Libya and the Arab Spring. Probably North Africa will get better by now, but we know already that Syria will be a big concern. What actually will be able to do as a Europe and Poland and a Polish presidency if the situation will go really bad? Like Libya, like Benghazi in the 19th of March. What exactly we can do? Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions in this round? So maybe we'll go back. Oh, please.
Good morning, Sergiusz Najar. I'm from Saner Group. It's an engineering company, and I will put a question in a business manner, since in business you should deliver. That's the success in business. So my question to Professor Matthew, although it's on Polish questions, I wouldn't like to put it to Danuta, but I will prefer to put a question to the advisor to the government, so he is well positioned. We are having a very special period of time when you have elections. So you cannot overstate the expectations from the European presidency because you have to deliver the results. On the other hand, the elections in Poland, and probably part of you know, are elections which are quite important in terms of setting a future European agenda between parties who are open to European integration and parties who are, let's say, more reserved and with more skepticism. So you need on one side more European support and more European solidarity with the Polish presidency to deliver. On the other hand, you have to be very clear and very well communicating to the society, to the voters, because next day the Prime Minister, the government, the presidency itself will go under vote. So what piece of advice you will give to the Polish government, say it openly, to deliver what is promised?
Thank you. Maybe we should end this part of the questions and give the panelists a chance to respond. I will start maybe in the reversed order, so going back to Mr. Misirioli, please.
Okay. The Arab Spring did well to the European neighborhood policy as a whole. Did well because it focused the attention of policymakers to what was happening, it focused the attention to democratization, focused the attention to transitions. On top of that, and it's not a secondary issue, it is thanks to the Arab Spring that the overall package for the European neighborhood policy was raised by 1.4 billion euros over 3 years on top of the previous endowment for the ENP. So I would say that on the whole, it has been beneficial for the entire ENP, and the focus on transitions has also helped focus on some aspects of transitions in the Eastern neighborhood. If you read the recent joint communication of the Eastern Election Service and the Commission on the ENP, the focus is on the Arab Spring, but also Belarus is on top of the agenda. And of course, Belarus represents a very, very difficult challenge in this respect because over the past few years, virtually all different policies have been tried out with respect to Belarus and with very little effect. And I think we are all confronted with the common challenge on finding the right formula that could have an impact in the short term in Belarus. And it's not about money. Certainly, it's not about money in this area. On Libya and Syria, I think that you have to be clear that this doesn't fall within the remit and the responsibility of the rotating presidency. It's Mrs. Ashton and the External Action Service, and it is Mr. Van Rompuy within the limits of his mandate that are mainly in charge of this respect. It's an issue that is normally dealt with in the European Council, and therefore the role of the Polish presidency as such is more that of one member state among others. I would not underestimate the fact that both Prime Minister Tusk and Foreign Minister Sikorski will receive questions from the Polish media in particular about what may or may not happen in that particular respect, but it's more an issue for collective responsibility. That said, and I understand that there is a panel right now that is discussing also these issues, I wouldn't be surprised if, following also some critical remarks that were made by Defense Secretary Robert Gates a few days ago, the day after Gaddafi is gone, and we cannot speculate on when, how, and why he may be gone, there will be a very, very strong push for putting in place an operation that will be at the same time a sort of peacekeeping operation and a humanitarian one, and also one that could assist the Libyan state to stick together and to build democratic institutions. And that the demand on the EU will be strong, and the demand also on Poland will be strong. Poland in the past already engaged itself south of the Mediterranean, also militarily. Let's not forget that Poland went to Chad in a ESDP operation a few years ago, and I think there will be a strong push for Poland to be engaged there, and there will be also a special eye on the Polish presidency to be active in that respect, not as presidency, but as Poland.
Thank you very much for that. Ms. Herman, please.
I would like to make just a very brief remark commenting on what my Georgian friend has just put into the context of our debate. And I have to confess, the Arab Spring did brought some concerns at the very beginning or the inception of the events. There was a lot of speculation, but I would like to agree to what the previous speaker just mentioned. Ultimately, it brought more attention to the Eastern neighborhood by the very definition of the debate in the European Union about the neighborhood policy as such, which I had to confess was in the state of stagnation, and probably this is why the European Commission has launched this comprehensive review of the Eastern neighborhood policy. Now, of course, we are in the stage when the next financial perspective is being discussed in the European Union, and I think that the best commitment and engagement that we could see towards the Eastern neighborhood would be perhaps reflected in the new figures of the new budget. And we are very much looking forward to that, and we would also like to advocate while preparing to the Eastern Partnership Summit, more and more invitations and engagement with the international financial institutions and with indeed all other interested stakeholders who could make this financial package for Eastern partners a little bit more attractive, knowing the financial constraints and what we have to expect in the aftermath of the financial crisis. As for geopolitics versus more for more principle, I think it is key. It is very crucial that we stick to the more for more principle, because this is the best motivation and stimulus for reforms in our countries that are expected by our own citizens and, of course, by the European Union, since we proclaim European integration as our primary objective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Professor Mayhew.
Yeah, in answer to the question on what the government should be promising, I mean, I think the government should. It's a very difficult balance. The government obviously should not awaken ideas in the Polish public that Poland can change everything. For instance, on the budget, I mean, on the multi-annual financial framework, Poland can at most get the discussion underway, put it on the right lines so that the Danes and the Cypriots can carry on. So you can't promise more than you can deliver. On the other hand, you have to talk up the importance of the European Union during your pre-election campaign. I actually don't think having an election in the middle of your presidency is a bad thing. I think it can work to the advantage of everybody. I think it can work to the advantage of everybody.
Finally, we know.
Because the government is bound to talk up EU issues, which is good for the EU. As long as it doesn't promise too much, it may even benefit in the election results. Let me just say one, if you don't mind, I'd like to come back to the comments that were made about Article 49. Article 49, for those who don't know, is the treaty article which allows accession of other European countries to the EU. I should point out now in the Lisbon Treaty there is another article on neighbourhood, which is Article 8, which is also potentially part of a legal basis for relations with the East European countries. Go back to 1991. I came here first as advisor to Jan Krzysztof Bielecki when he was Prime Minister. And when Poland was negotiating its association agreement, it had no guarantee that it was going to join the European Union. The possibility really arose a couple of years later with the Copenhagen criteria, Copenhagen summit. But that didn't prevent Poland rushing into beginning to implement bits of the acquis and really preparing for eventual accession. The payoff of that was that from the middle of the 90s, Poland got vast amounts of inward investment, which helped to modernize the economy and propel Poland to where it is today. For Moldova and Ukraine, Article 49 is obviously important, and I don't really understand why Germany, France, and one or two other member states, just having ratified the Lisbon Treaty, seem to be saying, well, we didn't really take Article 49 seriously. On the other hand, I mean, it's terribly important that, I don't know Moldova, I'm afraid, but I know Ukraine, it's terribly important that the economic reform agenda is worked through, and part of that is adapting to the EU acquis, and that will, in the end, lead to much more inward investment and eventually to reinforcing your own domestic economic reform agenda. So I think you should keep on mentioning Article 49 and even Article 8, but you shouldn't probably push it to the extent that the Germans and the French say, we don't want to know anything about those articles. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm also allowed to say thank you very much. Just on this, on the treaty, because my feeling is that several member states didn't read the treaty before the ratification, especially when it comes to the foreign policy. I think many ministers of foreign affairs that I meet are surprised what the treaty allows us to do on foreign common foreign policy, but that's just on the margin. I think what Antonio said at the beginning of his second contribution, that Libya did well to Europe. I think I would also like to say that the Arabs, of course, yeah. I would also like to say the same about the crisis, and that clearly shows that this machinery of decision-making, which is European Union, usually when there is a critical moment, is becoming very effective and efficient, and that's, I think, also good for us, because thanks to that we started all the reforms which were unthinkable 3 years ago in the financial sector, in the economic governance, and that's also important, I think, to remember that Europe has capacity to act very efficiently and very effectively when this critical mass of political understanding is reached, and that's always a good news, because we know that at the end of the day Europe will finally deliver, as will also the Polish presidency. In the context of the neighborhood policy, I would like to remind all of us here that from the very beginning, from the inception of this policy, we in Poland we have been extremely critical about the way neighborhood policy was structured and organized, and this all the East and South in the same package, in spite of the differentiation, formal differentiation later on, but we didn't like it. We always were suspicious about the efficiency of this policy, taking into account extremely small financial support, and Alan made a comparison with what we were getting before the accession, and if you have such a poor carrot in your hand, you can't probably be very strong on conditionality, so this didn't work well. And also, if you might remember what Romano Prodi was still saying, that in fact our neighborhood policy is about building a ring of friends around the European Union, which finally led basically to a cooperation with, you can call it governments or you can call it regimes, whatever the name you use. And also I think there was quite an unfair treatment in different cases. We refused to work with, and rightly so, with Lukashenko because he didn't meet the democratic criteria. At the same time, we didn't use this measure in the southern neighborhood. It didn't bother us that we cooperated with regimes which all of a sudden now we see as having nothing to do with, not even to say democracy, but with fairness, honesty, or whatever the name you use. So I think that what Antonio also mentioned, that there is a new package. I think the North Africa spring has sort of pushed us towards new approach to neighborhood and more focus also on the cooperation with civil society, or going beyond the regimes or beyond government is absolutely clear. And in case of Belarus, in fact, we have the situation that they are part of neighborhood policy, but I don't know what is it's not implemented, suspended, or whatever I don't remember the right formula for what we are doing with Belarus. So we are trying to, while working on sanctions all the time, which prove not to be efficient, as usually sanctions are not of this type, we are trying to find sort of channels to work closely with civil society in general, I could say, like this. And if this is a strategy, yes, we do have a strategy, but I don't know if this is an efficient strategy, and I think we have to think seriously on what we can do with Belarus to be more effective in what we are doing. And here I think Poland, I mean, we should do more, because we claim to understand, and we claim to be experts, and we claim to have the history, and but I think we have not been able till now, in spite of all the meetings in Weimar Triangle context, we have not been able to push it through the Council and to make Europe sort of come in line with what we might be proposing. So I don't think we are efficient. And one more thing in general on neighborhood policy, I think I can say it now because Poland is also contributing fully, according to it, without any rebate or anything like that, to the European budget. And I think we should insist on having this conditionality now, which I am strong supporter of conditionality, political, economic, whatever, but I'm strong supporter of conditionality now. But we have to have much stronger financial support if we want to be efficient. The same is true for the Northern Africa if you want to be sort of efficient, also going beyond the Northern Africa, because I agree with those who think that it's just the beginning of a big change in the global world. I think we should be prepared for that, to have a strategy, and to also understand that we will need also stronger financial support for this. Presidency, just a small comment on the delivery. Of course, the Polish presidency is not, in the context of elections and the need to deliver, it's not only a test for the president, for the government. I really believe that it's a strong test for all our political spectrum, for all the political parties, for the opposition, because I think what is at stake is not only Polish honor, where we are very sensitive, as we know, but it's also the strength of Europe, because Poland's presidency comes in very difficult and very important time and sort of European history, even if half of those challenges that Antonio mentioned that are unexpected to be, but they will surely come, so we can envisage there will be more of them, and I think they all will have impact on how Europe will function in the future. So I think it's really up to all of us, all the parties, just to have a deal on to make Poland strong in the time of presidency.
The government's promises, and then the whole nation should deliver.
we all should deliver. I think we, the nation, also should deliver. I think not only the government, but that would be best.
Thank you very much for these interventions. We almost out of time. That next panel begins in 2:30. I don't know if there are any final remarks from the audience that you would like to make. If not, maybe one of the panelists would like to give okay, please.
Thank you, Jacek. Just a short message for the Polish presidency. We have here European Parliament, governments, and academia, and also BEPA. We have to make better use of the critical infrastructure potential as a topic. Not critical infrastructure doesn't mean only energy or transportation. Means also the functioning, the governance, food security, water security, and so on. This is a concept that the European Union have developed. We have already directives, but we have to make better use. And because we have businessmen here, it means also business continuity and quality of life, which is very important in our European Union. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, maybe I will now ask each panelist to give 2 or 3 just final thoughts on Polish presidency, and starting with Professor Hibner, please.
I would just say one thing, because I was just inspired by what you were saying, even though it's maybe not directly linked to what you said. But I think what we lack in Europe a lot of things, and we know that we have just embarked on the reforms. We are completing, I hope, next Wednesday, the trialogue on the economic governance between the Parliament and the Council and the Commission. And I think we are trying. I think European institutions, in spite of what Alan said about European Parliament, that we don't know what to do with our powers, but I think some of us do know, and I think we all feel responsibility. But still, I believe that the most important challenge now is very difficult to make it operational, probably. But for Poland, the issue of building confidence in Europe, it's linked to solidarity, but not only. Confidence among the member states, among European institutions, among private sector that has huge things to do, banking sector that feels offended, and there will be more things coming to restrict their functioning in the months to come as well. So I think there is this distrust generally, or everybody is complaining about everybody else, if I can just colloquially say it like this. And I think for Poland has a credibility in doing something for this and building confidence, because I think we have joined Europe out of European solidarity. We have contributed to European solidarity, and I think we understand the importance of confidence and of trust. And if we manage through our presidency really to contribute to building European trust and confidence among all the partners, because it's a job for all of us in Europe, not only for European institutions or the presidency, I think that would be something I would remember the Polish presidency. I know it will be difficult to measure, but I think we will all feel it, that there is more confidence in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Mayku, your final comments or message to the Polish presidency.
Well, I mean, as an economist, you'd expect me to finish up with something extremely miserable, which I could do on the budget, because if you're all expecting, and if the Parliament is expecting a larger budget and all the rest of it, you're going to be disappointed. And I would like to point out brutally to all my Polish friends, if you want to do anything with the budget where you have countries like the United Kingdom, Germany and France saying no more money, so top down, no more money, then you have to start looking at the common agricultural policy and the second objective of the structural funds and so on, in order to put more money into neighborhood policy, which I think would be a very good use of the money. But on the more positive note, I mean, Poland is going to be the first good, effective presidency since the Lisbon Treaty came into force. Sorry to my Belgian, Hungarian friends. I think people in Brussels are quite confident on the quality of the management of the Polish presidency. I think in a few areas the Polish presidency can change the way in which the European Union is moving in the coming years. Neighbourhood policy is a very clear point there, but also some of these growth agenda points. I mean, I think retackling the internal market and getting some of the economic benefits out of a deeper internal market. That is something which is tremendously important to reinvigorating the whole European ideal, and I think there Poland can start to do several things during the presidency. So I'm very optimistic about the presidency.
Thank you very much. Minister, your final message or comment or
Thank you.
thoughts on Polish presidency?
For the first time, here comes a presidency that clearly proclaims European neighborhood as one of the major priorities for the next half a year. It does coincide with that unprecedented level of dialogue and relationship that my country is having nowadays with the European Union. So I think we're here to state about existence of very clear premises for joint success. And I wish Poland success in exercising the objectives of the presidency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Misirioli.
Well, in a very personal capacity, I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone in Brussels in this particular respect. First, on the Eastern Partnership, my suggestion to the Polish presidency would be not to put too much emphasis on summits. Spain did that 1 year ago with the Union for the Mediterranean, and look at the results. It has been a disaster throughout. Summits matter, but up to a point. What matters most is the work that is being carried out under the radar screen. It is the emphasis on concrete measures and initiatives. It is the fact that we have to be able to create success stories in our neighborhood. To the south, Tunisia is a strong candidate because it is doable, it is not too big, it has asked for help and assistance, which Egypt hasn't. Moldova could be another case in point in the Eastern Partnership, and so on and so forth, without neglecting others that are doing more. But we have to focus limited resources on success stories rather than on summitry. The Americans accused us in the past of suffering from summitry or summititis as a sort of illness. We have to be aware of doing summits well, but also to remain focused on the substance. The second one is on mobility. My suggestion would be to take mobility very seriously, because what we have now, especially from the south, is the mobility that we don't want. The answer to that is not no mobility whatsoever. It is smart mobility. And since Poland will be chairing the relative council formations that will deal with Schengen, and Schengen now has been put on the table by my own country and by France for rediscussion, I think that taking this seriously and focusing political energy and initiative on that in order to strike the right balance is going to be crucial. And it could be the one thing, the one unexpected thing for which the Polish presidency could be remembered.
Thank you very much. I wanted to thank all the panelists for their excellent presentations. And instead of trying to sum up the discussion, I will only pick up one thought from Professor Hibner, that what we really need, the sort of overall aim to rebuild confidence in Europe, and if Poland can contribute towards that, that will be a big success. So with that I will end, and you are invited to the auditorium for the following panel. Thank you all very much. Thank you.